Okay, Pop, getting busy coming back at you. We got the first part of our video done on our refresh rebuild on the LolliPop engine. Just want to illustrate a couple of things that I use when I do these builds on the engines that I'm building. There's a couple of tools I use to hone up the engine cylinder so we can get a good seal. Get a good seal from the rings. I'm gonna swing around what I use in terms of the ring on the stock bore. The stock bore is on the Predator is 70 millimeter, 756. That's a stock bore piston ring that's used. However, I use a piston ring on the engine that's 20 over because I foul fit my piston rings into my cylinder on the piston so that I can get a good seal on the compression that I'm trying to maintain so that I can get the power that I want to maintain from the engine. Here's a little picture here of my piston. It's eyebrowed with a valve relief for clearancing because I'm using a lift on the camshaft in addition to Clyde's rockers, which are ratioed at 1.25, and of course 1.25 multiplied by the lift on the camshaft will bring the absolute lift on the valves. And so I got release cut into the piston so that we don't have any clearance issues with this piston. In terms of what I use on the cylinder head, I use a fire ring, the stock fire ring gasket that comes with the Predators. I believe at 45 thousandths, and I try to allow myself anywhere from 7 to 10 thousandths clearance between the cylinder head and the piston coming up. Perhaps on this particular build, this piston is on a rod that's 40 over on the stock crank, and 40 over on the stock crank brings this piston up about 3 thousandths up out of the cylinder. Try to maintain, as I said, about 7 to 10 thousandths clearance so that we don't have any issues. Everything expands when it gets hot, so we don't want to have any issues with anything hitting when the piston's coming up into the cylinder head, or even when the valve is opening and closing and that piston is moving at 7 or 8,000 RPM inside of that engine. Okay, Pops are back here again. I might want to add on the clearancing. There were some clearancing issues on this build based on the type of camshaft that I was using with the exhaust lobe, I believe, hitting on the side of the crankshaft. So there was some clearancing that had to be done to the crankshaft, and also some clearancing that had to be done to the rod so that the camshaft lobe wouldn't hit when everything is spinning around. Now, as I understand, you can buy special design camshafts from NR Racing that have what is like a half cut lobe rather than a full cut lobe. Although I didn't want to go to that extreme in this build, so basically I took the crankshaft and the rod and I did all the initial clearancing right here in my shop, mocked everything up, and absolutely making sure that I have at least 8 to 10 thousandths clearance beyond where it would hit, because as I indicated, when stuff gets hot, it expands, and when stuff expands, it's likely that even if the crank were to walk or expand, when it gets hot, stuff will hit, and that's where your engines will come apart. So I try to use a general rule of at least 8 to 10 thousandths, if not more, on clearancing on rotating assembly parts, because I want to make sure that nothing's hitting when I'm turning at 7 to 8,000 RPM. Okay, here again in this short part of the video, I'm just showing you initially the components that I use when I do the valve lapping, so that I make sure I get a good seal when the valves are lapped into the cylinder head. So this is what I use. I use a power drill, the 2 valves, and the valve grinding compound, of course. Come right back to you with an illustration of how that's done. Okay, so with the last compound around the valve, we're going over to the cylinder head, and I'm going to insert into the cylinder head the valve, of course, and I'm going to do the exhaust side first. This is a particular method that I learned from a builder on how to lap the valves in using a power drill.
So if you're stuck in a makeup rut, this is your chance to get out. Call now for your risk-free trial, and you'll also get a free 5-piece makeup set, our gift to you. Hurry, don't miss this exclusive radio-only comparison.
Just going to take a second here so that I can actually get this power drill onto the valve.
1 out of 10 adults has diabetes. You may have it and not even know it, but you can reduce your chances of being that 1 in 10. There are many things you can do to manage or prevent diabetes. Eating a healthy diet, getting active, and losing weight.
It's actually a forward and back motion that you turn very gently with the valve into the valve seat, and then of course what happens is that you get a, see if I can give you a good look here on the camera.
Programs are available to help you prevent diabetes and its complications. Make a move. Go to Michigan.
This camera focus is not
to learn more. A message from the Michigan Department
really that good, but you get a nice bead on the valve for lapping it in. Okay, here's that lap that was put on that intake valve. As you can see, it's a nice smooth pattern all the way around the whole valve. Same pattern can be found on the valve seats all the way around, and make sure you get a good seal on them valves to keep that compression tight. This is what makes horsepower. Okay, we got our valves lapped in each of the valve guides, and we got our new single red 37-pound valve springs to replace for the ones that had already been used. There had not been that much tension loss, but since I'm doing a fresh build, just a fresh set of springs to make sure everything is up to A1. Okay, pops, I'm back here. It's out for a minute. I'm just showing you how to set them locks right down in there. Start to release the tension. Release the tension off of the C-clamp. The locks come right up and they seat without flipping and sliding all around and dropping, and it just makes it real easy. Nice tool. This tool is just incredible. And then, of course, like I said, I take the butt end of a hammer, tap on top of the valve, the butt end of my hammer. Actually, I do it with the other end, and that helps those locks to seat, where they definitely won't walk or move. So I'm back here. I'm on the intake side, putting the intake valve back in, and the locks. The block is already in on one side. I'm just shooting this because, like I said, this tool is incredible. I'm sure that maybe some other poor boy might want to go out and get them a brake, spring compressor, and a nice C-clamp, and drill it out, and it's just phenomenal. I used to wrestle so with trying to get these locks in, but now it's not an issue anymore. Okay, I'm putting the rockers back on the head. I got the valves back in. They've been relashed, and new oil seal is in on the intake side. And what you see me doing right here is I'm using some red Loctite, because this is what's going to go into the opposite side of Clyde's rocker. And the Loctite is to keep the screw from walking. It's to keep the screw from walking so that the pins don't come out. A lot of heat on the top of the cylinder head, so thusly we use the Loctite so that the vibration that comes in the top of the engine won't cause that particular holding screw to walk and come out at any high RPM. Okay, so now we are installing the intake side rocker. Putting this baby back together. And we're going to lose our little spacer here. I'm going to have to shut the camera off for a minute and make an adjustment. Okay, so this is the intake side rocker that's being fitted and locked in, tightened up with the red Loctite so that the set screws don't move. The rockers are going to rotate real good. There is no, there's some side to side, but there ain't no up and down play in the valve train geometry. As indicated, as I said, these are 1.25 ratio rockers. Multiplied the lift of my cam is going to give me the lift on the camshaft performance. Okay, that cylinder head is ready. That baby is ready to be reassembled back onto the engine. Now we're going to move on to some of the other steps and other phases as refresh, rebuild. Pop, get busy. Okay, finished up that cylinder head over there. So now we're about to get over here on the engine block. And I use this ball hose. And I do a refresh on the engine. I do it with this drill, and I go 2 directions, up and down, 2 directions, up and down, forward and back, reverse, forward, up and down, reverse, forward, and just basically clean the glaze off of the cylinder for when it goes back together. And I actually also use this hone as well, but I'm going to clean that cylinder now and see if I got any high or low spots or shiny spots inside that cylinder. And if I see anything like that, then I know that there's some scoring or some damage that was done inside the cylinder, and then I use the other hone to try to clean that up. Okay, I don't know how well you can see that from this camera angle, but to check that cylinder, I wiped it down. Actually, I'm going to foul fit the rings, and then after I do the foul fit on the rings, I'm going to wash that cylinder down with a soapy wet hot towel, to clean all any of the grit that might be left. But that home, like I said, the motor had been a freshly built, and that honing right there, you can see some of the swatches from that ball. That really clean that up. It's gonna make it seal up real good when I put those new rings in and get ready to put that piston back in there when this engine is gonna go back together. This is a Pop Get Busy build on the LolliPop Refresh and rebuild on the LolliPop engine, Predator engine. This is another angle from the other side so that you can see how beautiful that cleanup was when we get ready to put this piston and reassemble this engine back together, put it together. It's still going to make that incredible horsepower that we're looking for. Okay, so I'm back after honing that cylinder up real good over there, and I'm about to select my piston rings. These 4 rings that I have right here are laid out, were previously file fitted. These rings are measured at 2776. This is the wise coal. This is actually a 20 over ring for the Wiseco piston, but I discovered that the Wiseco piston rings will actually fit on the stock Hemi Predator, which was initially a flathead piston, and they actually fit into the ring lands almost perfectly, and they still are pretty good. This 2756 XM, this is actually the stock size bore ring that comes 70 millimeters. You can see it right there on the package, which is what the stock Predator design is at 70 millimeter. But when I set these engines up, I go with a 20 over 70 millimeter, which is a 70.5 millimeter piston ring, because I actually file fit them into the cylinder based on what my particular setting and choices are. These rings right here are the rings that I have selected. These rings here have actually already been ran in the engine. This is the top ring, second ring, and the 2 oil rings. Top ring, second ring, and the 2 oil rings. And these rings have already been run in the engine. I don't know that you can tell that there's any particular scoring. Actually, these rings are kind of shiny. That second ring there, but I take this second ring right here, and these rings have never been used, so I'm just going to file fit the new set. Since the previous set had already been in the engine and had gotten hot, they may have lost some of the tolerances and not sealed as good as the new set will once they have been file fitted and reattached to the piston over there, and the piston goes back into that cylinder. We want that cylinder to be tight, hold the compression based on the milling of the head and where the piston from the rod that we're using, which is a arc rod. It's a 3-3048, which is actually it's not a 20 over rod over stock. It's a 40 over rod, and this rod actually will pop up out of that cylinder about 3 or 4 thousandths. I mean, depending on what Predator cylinder you using, because they all decked all over different places. But on this particular deck, that piston only comes up about 3,000. I have had some where the piston has come up as high as 6,000 out of the deck. It's one of the things that I have been told, you know, from learning and doing this here from some of the other builders, to get that piston to pop up out of that cylinder is how you make that horsepower, by raising the compression. Okay, this is that crankcase cover. I just wanted to kind of zoom in on a little feature that I use when I assemble these engines. I had to kind of offset that light, but if you can see on this cam journal here on the cover, it has been broadened, and also I have tapped a oil drain, not a drain, but an oil hole where oil will actually drain onto the back side of the camshaft as it's moving around inside the crankcase. That helps to keep the camshaft lubricated, especially when the engine is running, it gets hot, and if it gets dry back there on the back side of that cam, then there will have to be some tendency for this journal here on this cover. It could crack. Of course, there are aftermarket stuff, but we talking poor boy stuff here. This is a poor boy move. Okay, this is inside the actual block itself. On the back side of the camshaft, the journal. It's a little hard to kind of visualize it there, but I have opened up with the Dremel, just open it up so that the oil will drain down onto that camshaft, and then also there's a hole drilled so that the oil can drain to the back side of the camshaft, just to keep everything lubricated up so that we don't, in case of overheating, and then of course if it gets dry back there, that journal will crack. I have seen them crack. That could be possibly where some of the stresses from these blocks begin. It's just a little po' boy move, a feature that I picked up from somebody, and I applied it on these particular kinds of builds. Okay, this is the camshaft that I selected to use on this particular build. This is a precision cam. This is a Mike Edwards grind precision cams down there, I believe in North Carolina, South Carolina, one of the Carolinas. But you know, I was introduced to Mike. Mike's a real good guy, Mike Edwards, and I asked Mike for a particular kind of application that I needed because of course I carry a lot of weight, and Mike sent me this cam. I'm very happy with this camshaft. This camshaft makes power under 8,000, probably turns on somewhere around 2,500, but it'll make power all the way to 8,000 RPMs. These are actually studs that I put into this cylinder block. These studs are hardened. They're kind of inexpensive, but they're actually compatible to an ARP stud. They don't walk, and they actually hold that cylinder head down. When you torque that cylinder head down real good, it holds it down and makes sure that that cylinder head is sealed up real good on the deck of that block. Just a little bit of that sweet sparkle on that LolliPop paint. Just a little bit of that sweet sparkle. Okay, so I usually keep a blank piston on the table. It's one of the features that the builders use when we're going to do the file fitting on the piston rings, and so that we make sure that that piston ring is square in the cylinder when we begin to measure it for the gap that we want, the end gap, the ring end gaps that we want to set up on the build. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that most builders, they know what this little apparatus is right here. It's what's used to file our rings. Actually, I didn't illustrate earlier. The lifters were they were in pretty good shape, and then of course there was no bend in either of my push rods, so they're going to go back after the refresh is done. And I'm about to go in secret mode because I don't really tell anybody that's building, they know what they want their ring gap set at, and so I have my own specific preference about where I set them, and I'm gonna come back to you when I start putting this thing together. Okay, here you know, it's pretty much winding down, getting to the end of the day. I'm shutting the lights down. I'm sure everybody knows that Rome wasn't built in a day, and every man got to get his rest. So now it's time to do just that. But I got everything staged and everything set up to begin to do my assembly on tomorrow when I come back into my little shop. Once the rings have been filed and fitted into the cylinder and then placed back on the piston, it'll be time to start putting everything back together and getting this LolliPop back up to its true potential. Signing out. Pop getting busy as always on his video. Ciao.